Hello there, and welcome to the Astro Sleep channel. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Tonight, we are not merely observing the stars from a distance. We are embarking on a long, slow voyage to the outer reaches of our solar system, drifting toward the silent, majestic realm of the Ringed Kingdom, the planet known as Saturn. It is a journey of patience and grace. A voyage that took 20 years to unfold, carried by a vessel named Cassini. If these calm, curious explorations help you unwind and find a place of stillness, it helps other sleepy souls find their way here too, guiding them out of the noise and into this quiet sanctuary of stars. And now, there is nothing left for you to do but rest. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body become light, as if gravity has eased its hold on you. Imagine that you are floating, weightless and free, untethered from the demands of the day. Let us begin. Our story starts not at the destination, but with the departure. In the autumn of 1997, a traveler left the Earth. It rose through the clouds and the blue sky, ascending until the atmosphere thinned into the black velvet of space. This traveler, the Cassini spacecraft, was destined for a world far removed from our own, a world of golden clouds and icy rings. But to reach such a distant kingdom, one cannot simply fly in a straight line. The journey requires a dance with the planets, a slow and elegant waltz across the solar system, to gather the momentum needed to cross the great dark ocean. As we drift away from the warmth of the sun, we leave behind the familiar blue marble of Earth. It shrinks in the distance, becoming a pale, shining dot. And then, eventually, it is just another star in the firmament. We are sailing into the true night now. The silence here is absolute. It is a deep, ancient silence that wraps around the vessel like a heavy blanket. There is no wind to push us, only the gentle, invisible currents of gravity guiding our path. To cross the billions of kilometers of emptiness, our vessel had to borrow energy from the giants. Twice it swung past Venus, the shrouded planet, dipping into its gravity well not to land, but to be caught in a gentle embrace that flung it faster into the dark. It returned briefly past Earth, a final farewell, before casting itself outward toward the king of planets, Jupiter. Imagine drifting past Jupiter. It is vast and stormy, a swirling marble of amber and cream, but from our vantage point in the silence of space it seems peaceful. A colossal monument suspended in the void. Cassini approached this giant, stealing a fraction of its orbital energy, using Jupiter's immense gravity as a slingshot. It was a moment of perfect alignment, a celestial alignment that occurs only once every few centuries, allowing our traveler to gain the speed necessary to reach the outer realms. And then, the long sleep began. For years, the vessel coasted through the emptiness between the worlds. There was nothing to see but the static, unblinking eyes of the distant stars. This is the patience of space travel. It is not a rush. It is a surrender to the vastness of time and distance. In this deep cold, where the sun is nothing more than a bright star, warmth is a precious thing. Cassini carried within it a beating heart, a source of heat that did not rely on the distant sun. Deep inside its core were 3 radioisotope thermoelectric generators. They were like glowing embers in a winter hearth, radiating a steady, comforting warmth. This heat kept the instruments alive, protecting the delicate senses from the freezing bite of the interstellar night. It was a small, private fire carried through the darkness, a reminder of the energy that binds the universe together. As the years drifted by, the destination began to emerge from the shadows. At first, it was just a point of light, slightly golden, slightly oblong. But as we drifted closer, the shape resolved itself. The Ringed Kingdom appeared. It hung there in the darkness, suspended in perfect isolation. It was not like the rocky worlds of the inner solar system. It was a giant of gas and mystery, painted in soft hues of ochre and gold. And surrounding it, like a halo of frozen light, were the rings. From this distance, they looked solid, a perfect disk of ice and dust circling the planet in eternal silence. They did not look like chaotic debris. They looked like a masterpiece of geometry, a flat, shimmering plane that caught the weak light of the sun and scattered it back into the void. We had arrived at the threshold of the giant. The journey of 7 billion kilometers was over, and the dance of 13 years was about to begin. The vessel slowed, allowing itself to be captured by Saturn's gravity, surrendering to the pull of the planet, ready to orbit, ready to watch, ready to listen to the secrets whispered by the rings. We have arrived. After the long, silent years of drifting through the velvet void, the great golden giant is no longer a distant star. It is a world. It fills the view, a majestic sphere of light hanging in the eternal night. We have entered the realm of the Ringed Kingdom. The transition from the emptiness of deep space to the presence of Saturn is like stepping from a dark, quiet room into a vast, sunlit cathedral. But the light here is not harsh. It is soft, diffused, and ancient. It is sunlight that has traveled nearly 1.5 billion kilometers to reach us, losing its heat but keeping its brilliance. It reflects off the clouds and the ice, creating a glow that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. As our vessel Cassini settles into its orbit, we begin to perceive the true scale of what lies before us. This is the celestial dance in its most elegant form. For years we moved in straight lines and long arcs, but now we surrender to the circle. We are caught in the gravity of a giant, pulling us into a slow, rhythmic embrace. There is no resistance here, only a gentle yielding to the laws of the cosmos. We are no longer travelers passing through. We are now guests walking the halls of this silent palace. Let your mind drift toward the planet itself. Before we look at the rings, look at the body of the king. It is a ball of spun gold and pale ochre, striped with bands of cream and soft brown. These are not solid lands. There are no mountains of rock, no valleys of soil, no shores of sand. Everything we see is cloud. It is a world made entirely of air and mist, layers upon layers of gas, wrapping around a hidden core. Imagine falling into those clouds. You would not hit a surface. You would simply sink deeper and deeper into a warm, thickening fog. The bands that wrap around the planet are like rivers of wind, flowing alongside each other in perfect parallel lines. They do not clash with the violence of a storm. From this height, they seem to slide past one another with the smoothness of oil on water. It is a vision of fluid order, a weather system that has stabilized into a pattern of eternal calm. The colors are muted and soothing, like the sepia tones of an old photograph or the soft hues of a desert at twilight. But the true crown of this kingdom, the sight that draws the eye and holds the spirit in awe, is the rings. From our vantage point high above the equator, the rings spread out like a vast, shimmering sheet of silver. They are the most perfect structure in the solar system. They look solid, like a disc of polished metal forged by some celestial smith. Smooth and unbroken, they catch the sunlight and scatter it, glowing with a spectral luminescence against the black backdrop of space. It is a halo of light, a brim of ice, a circle of perfection. And yet, as we drift closer, as we let our vision dissolve the illusion of solidity, we discover their true nature. They are not a solid sheet. They are a river of millions, billions, trillions of particles. Imagine a snowstorm suspended in time. That is what the rings are. They are made of ice, pure water ice, frozen harder than rock in the cold of the outer solar system. Some of these pieces are as small as grains of sand, tiny specks of glittering dust that dance in the sunlight. Others are the size of marbles or snowballs that you might hold in your hand. And a rare few are giants, boulders of ice, the size of a house or a mountain, drifting silently in the flock. There is no sound here. If you were floating among them, you would hear nothing. The collisions, when they happen, are slow and gentle, a soft nudging of one snowflake against another. They do not crash. They drift together, kiss, and drift apart, exchanging momentum in a silent exchange that has been happening for millions of years. It is a garden of ice. The light here plays tricks on the eyes. As the angle of the sun changes, the ice crystals act like prisms, breaking the pale sunlight into tiny flashes of color. Sparkles of blue, hints of rose, fleeting glimmers of violet appear and vanish in the silence. It is a sea of diamonds, vast and deep, rolling around the planet in a loop that has no beginning and no end. The scale of this ring system is difficult to comprehend, yet it is soothing to try. They are wide, incredibly wide. They stretch out for nearly 300,000 kilometers. You could line up Earths one after another, like beads on a string, and they would roll comfortably across the width of these rings. And yet, for all their vastness, they are impossibly thin. In some places, the rings are no thicker than the height of a two-story house. If you were to look at the rings from the side, edge on, they would almost disappear, becoming nothing more than a razor-thin line of light drawn across the dark. This contrast, this immense width and delicate thinness, gives them a fragility that defies their size. They are a veil, a curtain of lace draped around the planet. They are held in place by the invisible hands of gravity, balanced perfectly between the pull of the planet trying to draw them in and the speed of their orbit trying to fling them out. They exist in the balance. They are the physical manifestation of equilibrium. Let us drift specifically toward the different realms within this ring system. Scientists have given them names, letters of the alphabet, but let us think of them as movements in a symphony. There is the B ring, the brightest and most dense. It is a river of intense light. Here, the ice particles are packed closely together, reflecting so much sunlight that they cast a deep, heavy shadow onto the planet below. It is the main body of the crown, a broad band of brilliance that seems to hum with a silent energy. To look at it is to be blinded by the purity of ice. It is a field of white, a plain of eternal winter circling the golden clouds. Then there is the A ring, separated from the B ring by a great divide. It is slightly more transparent, a veil rather than a wall. The light passes through it more easily, softening the darkness behind it. It is elegant and refined, moving with a slightly slower rhythm than its inner neighbor. And separating them is the Cassini division. From a distance, it looks like a gap, a black empty lane in the highway of ice. It looks like a void, but even here, in the emptiness, there is presence. It is not truly empty, it is merely less full. Faint, dark strands of dust drift through this gap, like ghosts wandering between the worlds. It is a reminder that in this kingdom, even the empty spaces are filled with subtle matter, with hidden whispers of creation. Closer to the planet, fading into the upper atmosphere, is the sea ring. It is faint and translucent, like a shadow of the great rings above it. It is darker, made of materials that do not shine as brightly, perhaps ancient dust or rock mixed with the ice. It spins rapidly, a dark halo hugging the planet, a quiet undertone to the bright melody of the outer rings. As we drift here, suspended in the vacuum, we can feel the stillness of it all. It does not feel like a chaotic system of orbiting debris. It feels like a painting. The motion is so smooth, so constant, that it looks like stillness. It is the stillness of a spinning top that has reached perfect balance, sleeping in its motion. We are looking at history. Some of this ice is as old as the solar system itself, remnants of the primordial cloud that birthed the sun and the planets. Other parts are younger, perhaps the remains of a moon that wandered too close and was gently pulled apart by Saturn's gravity, surrendering its form to become a beautiful circle of dust. It is a cycle of birth and transformation, played out over aeons so slow that to us it seems frozen in time. There is a profound peace in knowing that this exists, even when we are not looking at it, even when we are busy with our small lives on our blue planet. Saturn is there. It is spinning in the dark. The rings are glowing. The ice is drifting. The shadows are lengthening and shortening as the planet tilts on its long journey around the sun. It does not need us to witness it to be beautiful. It simply is. It is a monument to the quiet majesty of the universe. As Cassini moved into this realm, it did not disturb the peace. It became a part of it. It became another speck in the sky, another tiny moonlet orbiting the giant. It turned its cameras, its eyes toward this spectacle, not to conquer, but to appreciate. And what we see through those eyes is a world of texture. We see waves. Yes, there are waves in the rings. Just as the moon pulls the tides of our oceans, the moons of Saturn pull at the rings. They create ripples that propagate through the ice, spiral waves that wind around the planet, like grooves on a vinyl record. These are density waves, areas where the ice particles bunch up and then spread out, creating patterns of light and dark that spiral outward. They are the footprints of gravity, visual echoes of the moons passing by. We see the play of shadow. As the planet turns, it casts a long triangular shadow across the rings. We can watch as the shadow sweeps over the ice, extinguishing the light, plunging millions of kilometers of ring into a temporary night, only for them to emerge moments later back into the sun. It is a slow, rhythmic blinking, a celestial day and night that happens independent of the world below. And we see the vertical structures. For a long time we thought the rings were perfectly flat, but at the edge of the great shadows, during the equinox when the sun hits the ring's edge on, we see that the ice is not always flat. There are bumps, there are ridges. Tall piles of ice cast long, dramatic shadows across the plain. These are the mountains of the rings, temporary peaks that rise and fall, sculpted by the gravity of passing moons. Even in this flatness, there is texture. Even in this smoothness, there is relief. We are drifting now, carried by the same momentum that holds the rings in place. We are floating above the north pole of the planet. Below us, the golden clouds swirl in their slow, hypnotic patterns. Around us, the rings stretch out to the horizon, a flat, endless plain of silver. Above us, the stars are steady and unblinking, the distant watchers of this silent court. The feeling here is one of absolute solitude, but not loneliness. It is the solitude of a sanctuary. It is a place where the noise of the universe has been hushed, where the chaos of creation has been smoothed into a perfect circle. It is a place where time seems to slow down, where a minute stretches into an hour and an hour into an age. Breathe in this image. Let the gold and the silver fill your mind. There is no rush to leave. We have years to explore this place. We have endless orbits to complete. The dance has only just begun. We are merely at the threshold, standing in the doorway of the palace, looking in at the wonders that await. The rings are calling to us, whispering their secrets in the language of light and gravity. And we will listen. We will drift closer. We will let the current take us where it will. For now, simply float. Float in the presence of the giant. Float in the light of the rings. Feel the weightlessness of your body mirror the weightlessness of the ice. You are part of this dance now. You are a traveler in the Ringed Kingdom, and you are welcome here. The universe is vast and dark and quiet, and you are safe within it, held by the gentle gravity of a dream. As we continue our slow drift through the silent expanse of the Ringed Kingdom, we begin to notice that the great silver sheets of ice are not unbroken. Within the vast, shimmering plains of the rings there are paths. There are dark, empty lanes carved into the white, winding their way around the planet like grooves in a vinyl record. These gaps are not accidents of nature, nor are they empty voids of nothingness. They are the carefully tended gardens of the Saturnian system, maintained by a special class of celestial guardians. We call them the shepherd moons. These are not the giant spherical worlds like Titan or Rhea that dominate the outer orbits. These are small, humble, and oddly shaped wanderers. They live within the rings themselves, or just at their edges, spending their eternity in a delicate game of gravity and motion. Their task is simple yet profound. They keep the rings in order. They herd the billions of icy particles, nudging them back into line, clearing the gaps, and sculpting the edges of the rings into sharp, precise boundaries. They are the silent custodians of this icy cathedral. Let us drift toward the Enceladus Gap, a wide, dark river flowing within the bright A-ring. It is a lane of emptiness, 325 kilometers wide, swept clean of the bright ice that surrounds it. And there, floating in the center of this darkness, is the guardian responsible for its clarity. Its name is Pan. Pan is a peculiar and delightful little world. It is not a round ball, but rather shaped like a flying saucer, or perhaps a piece of ravioli drifting in space. It has a bulging center and a thin, wide ridge wrapping around its equator. This shape tells the story of its life. Pan travels at a speed slightly different from the ring particles on either side of it. As it moves, its gravity gently sweeps up dust and small grains of ice from the edges of the gap. Over millions of years, this material has settled softly onto Pan's equator, building up layer upon layer, creating a smooth tutu-like skirt around its middle. Imagine the patience of this process. It is a slow, gentle accumulation. There is no violence in it, only a soft gathering. Pan moves through its gap like a monk walking a labyrinth, clearing the path simply by existing. Any particle that strays into the gap is either nudged back into the ring or welcomed onto the surface of the moon itself. Because of Pan, the anchor gap remains open, a permanent window in the wall of white, kept steady and constant by this lonely, saucer-shaped sentinel. Drifting further out, near the very edge of the A ring, we find another gap, much narrower and sharper than the one Pan inhabits. This is the Keeler Gap, a mere 42 kilometers wide. It is a slender thread of darkness, and within it lives a moon named Daphnis. Daphnis is smaller than Pan, only about 8 kilometers across, a tiny speck of rock in the vastness. But its influence is poetic. Daphnis does not just clear its path, it dances with the rings. Its gravity is weak, yet it is just enough to whisk the nearby dust particles as it brushes by. As Daphnis orbits, it creates waves in the edges of the gap. These are not just ripples on a flat surface, they are three-dimensional waves. The gravity of the little moon pulls the ice particles up above the plane of the rings and down below it, creating vertical structures that rise like gentle hills in a field of snow. When the sun is low, during the Saturnian equinox, these waves cast long, dramatic shadows across the rings. From our vantage point on Cassini, we can see these shadows stretching out, revealing the texture of the ice. It looks like the wake of a boat moving slowly through a calm lake, a V-shaped pattern of ripples that follows the moon on its endless journey. I can only imagine what it would be like to sit on the surface of Daphnis. You would be standing on a small, quiet rock, surrounded by the towering walls of the rings on either side. You would watch as the waves of ice rise and fall in slow motion, following the invisible tug of the ground beneath your feet. It would be a view of absolute majesty, a front-row seat to the fluid dynamics of the cosmos, played out in silence and starlight. You would see glorious Saturn and its many moons in the background, a sight truly to behold. Further still, at the outer boundary of the ring, we encounter Atlas. Like Pan, Atlas has developed a distinctive saucer shape, a smooth, flattened sphere with a prominent equatorial ridge. It patrols the edge of the ring, acting as a living border. Its surface is remarkably smooth, lacking the deep impact craters we see on other moons. This smoothness is a testament to its gentle life. It is blanketed in the fine dust of the rings. It wears the ring material like a soft coat, smoothing over its history, turning it into a polished artifact of the system. It looks bizarre, yet perfectly adapted to its environment, a creature formed by the very environment it guards. And then there is the F-ring, the thin braided strand of ice that lies alone, detached from the main ring system. Here, the dynamics are even more complex, governed by the shepherd moon, Prometheus. Prometheus is larger, over 100 kilometers long, and oblong like a potato. It does not live in a gap. It patrols the inner edge of this thin ring. Prometheus is a sculptor of shadows. Its orbit is not a perfect circle, so at times it dips closer to the F-ring, and at other times it swings further away. When it comes close, its gravity reaches out like an invisible hand. It draws a streamer of material out of the core of the ring, pulling a long, tenuous ribbon of ice toward itself. These streamers create a pattern of ripples and knots in the ring, leaving behind channels and wakes that look like intricate braiding. It is a slow, elegant interaction that repeats every 14 hours. Prometheus dips in, steals a kiss of ice, and swings away, leaving the ring forever changed, yet eternally the same. It is a relationship of constant transformation, a reminder that this system is alive with motion. The F-ring is not a static circle. It is a fluid stream, constantly stirred and reshaped by the gravity of its shepherd. But not all shepherds are large enough to be named or seen. Buried deep within the densest parts of the rings, there are hidden influences. Cassini's sharp eyes spotted features that look like double-bladed propellers spinning in the ice. These are disturbances caused by tiny moonlets, objects no larger than a football field, too small to clear a full gap, but large enough to create a stir. These moonlets are like ghosts in the machine. We cannot see the rocky centers themselves. They are hidden by the dust, but we can see the mark they leave behind. They create two short wings of cleared space, one leading and one trailing, which look exactly like the propeller of an airplane. These features remind us that the rings are likely filled with thousands, perhaps millions of these tiny anonymous shepherds, each one contributing its own small ripple to the grand symphony. They are the hidden mechanics of the rings, turning and churning the ice, preventing it from ever settling into total stagnation. The density of these objects is likely low, perhaps comparable to a loose snowball, fragile clumps of material that have barely enough gravity to hold themselves together. Yet, they persist. They survive collisions, they survive the tidal forces, and they continue their endless orbit. Some of them even have evidence of solid cores, tough enough to survive crashing through the F-ring, kicking out dust and creating glittering trails of haze that follow them like a veil. As we watch these moons, large and small, we are witnessing the mechanism of order. Without them, the rings might spread out and dissolve, or collapse into a chaotic mess. It is the gravity of the shepherds that confines the rings, that sharpens their edges and maintains their beauty. They are the reason the rings have definition. They are the reason for the gaps. They define the boundaries between the possible and the impossible. There is a profound sense of purpose here. Pan, Daphnis, Atlas, Prometheus, they are solitary figures, isolated in their lanes, yet they are intimately connected to the trillions of particles around them. They are never touching, yet always touching. They are bound by the invisible threads of gravity, a force that acts across the silence to bind the shepherd to the flock. Let this image settle in your mind. The vast white ocean of ice, the dark, clean rivers of the gaps, and the small, silent moons drifting through them, turning slowly, watching over their domain. It is a system of perfect balance. It is a celestial clockwork that has been ticking for eons and will continue to tick long after we have turned away. Everything here moves with grace. There is no hurry. Pan does not rush to complete its orbit. Daphnis does not strain to create its waves. They simply float, carried by the momentum of the universe, fulfilling their roles with effortless ease. And as you watch them in your mind's eye, let their slowness become your slowness. Let their drift become your drift. You are floating alongside them, a silent observer in the gap, protected by the shepherds, safe in the stillness of the Ringed Kingdom. The dust settles, the waves rise and fall. The dance continues, quiet and eternal, in the deep, soft dark of space. As we drift deeper into the luminous ocean of the rings, our eyes begin to adjust to the subtleties of the light. At first glance, the rings appeared to be a series of perfect concentric circles, distinct lanes of ice separated by clear, dark gaps. They seemed static, like grooves carved into stone, unchanging and eternal. But as we float closer, carried by the silent momentum of our voyage, the rings are not still. They are alive with a hidden rhythm, a pulse that moves through the ice like a slow breath. We are entering the realm of the spiral waves. Imagine dropping a single pebble into a dark, still pond. You watch as the ripples expand outward, perfect circles of motion traveling across the water. Now imagine that the water is not water at all, but billions of icy crystals, and the pebble is not a stone, but the invisible rhythmic tug of a distant moon. In the vast B ring and in the outer reaches of the A ring, we see these ripples. They do not travel, they are density waves, slow-moving compressions where the ice particles are gently crowded together and then released, over and over again. One of the most hypnotic sights Cassini revealed to us is known as the Janus 2-1 spiral density wave. The name sounds technical, a label for a catalogue, but the reality is a masterpiece of natural art. When you look at images of this region, your eyes tell you that you are seeing many separate, thin rings packed tightly together. It looks like the texture of a fine fabric, or the grooves of a phonograph record magnified 1,000 times. But this is a trick of the light. What you are actually seeing is a single spiral arm. It is the same majestic structure that shapes the great galaxies of the universe, the same geometry that forms the shell of a nautilus or the center of a sunflower. But here, in the gravity of Saturn, the spiral is wound incredibly tight. It loops around the planet again and again, wrapping upon itself so closely that it appears to be a series of separate rings. Every second line you see in the pattern belongs to the same long, continuous arm, winding its way through the darkness. This spiral is born from a phenomenon called orbital resonance. It occurs at a specific distance from Saturn, a place where the particles in the ring orbit the planet exactly twice for every single orbit of the moon Janus. It is a celestial harmony, a musical ratio of 2 to 1. Every time Janus passes by outside the rings, it gives the ice particles at this location a gentle gravitational kick. Because the timing is perfect, always happening at the same point in their orbit, they accumulate. The energy builds until it creates a wave, a coherent structure that begins to spiral outward through the ring. There is a visual magic here, a strange illusion that plays with our sense of perspective. In the photographs returned by Cassini, the waves in this region appear to tilt away from us, as if the ring plane is warping or bending at the corner. But the rings are flat. The illusion is created because the wavelength, the distance between the ripples, changes as the wave moves further away from the source of the resonance. The spirals get tighter and tighter the further they propagate, tricking the eye into seeing a slope where there is only a plane. It is a landscape of light and shadow, a mirage made of ice. But the most profound secret of these waves is not just their shape, it is what they remember. These rings are not merely passive matter, they are a recording device. They are a physical history of the solar system, encoded in ice. To understand this, we must look to the authors of the wave, the moons Janus and Epimetheus. These two moons are locked in one of the most elegant and gentle dances in the cosmos. They share almost the same orbit, traveling around Saturn on paths that are nearly identical. In any other system, this might lead to a collision, a violent meeting of rock. But here, the laws of gravity have choreographed a different outcome. Every 4 years, the inner moon catches up to the outer moon. As they draw close, they do not crash. Instead, they exchange momentum. The inner moon gains speed and rises to a higher orbit, while the outer moon loses speed and sinks to a lower one. They effectively swap places. They trade lives. It is a polite silent do-si-do, performed on a galactic scale, a swap that has been happening for billions of years. Every time Janus and Epimetheus switch places, the gravitational resonance shifts slightly. The source of the kick moves. The rings respond to this change by starting a new wave, a new crest in the spiral pattern. This means that the spiral wave we see is not just a continuous loop, it is a timeline. The distance between any pair of crests in the wave corresponds to 4 years' worth of the wave traveling downstream. We can look at this image and read it like the rings of a great ancient tree. Just as a tree trunk encodes the years of drought and rain in its wood, the Saturnian rings encode the history of the moons in their ice. We can trace the spiral back, counting the crests, measuring the decades. We can point to a specific ripple and say, this is where the moons swapped places 40 years ago. We can point to another further out and say, this ripple was born when Voyager first flew past Saturn in the early 1980s. It is a stunning realization. The orbital history of these moons is preserved in the structure of the rings themselves. The wave seen in the upper left of the image corresponds to the positions of Janus and Epimetheus, from a time when humanity was just beginning to send its first ambassadors to the stars. The memory of that time is still there, rippling slowly through the B-ring, moving away from the source, but never fading entirely. There is something deeply soothing about this concept of encoded time. In our lives on Earth, time feels fleeting. Seconds vanish into the past. Moments dissolve as soon as they happen. But here, in the Ringed Kingdom, time is given a physical form. It is visible, it is tangible. The past is not gone, it is simply further down the spiral. The motions of the moons are not lost to the void. They are etched into the ice, creating a pattern that endures. As we drift over these density waves, watching the play of light and shadow, we are looking at a universe that remembers. We see the universe organizing itself not through force, but through rhythm. The chaos of billions of individual particles is tamed by the repetitive, gentle tug of gravity, transforming a cloud of dust into a spiral of perfect order. The pacing of this movement is slow, almost imperceptible. If you were floating right next to the rings, you would not see the wave crashing like water on a beach. You would see a slow, hypnotic shifting of the stars through the gaps in the ice. You would feel a sense of vast, heavy rotation. It is a rhythm that belongs to a timescale far greater than our own, a pulse that beats once every 4 years, a breath that takes decades to exhale. Let yourself be mesmerized by the tightness of the coil. Follow the lines with your mind's eye. Round and round they go, tracing the circumference of the planet, binding the system together. There is no beginning and no end to the loop, only the continuous smooth motion of the spiral. It draws you in, pulling your thoughts away from the linear worries of the day and into the circular peace of the orbit. The spiral is a symbol of the journey inward. As we follow the wave, we are led closer to the planet, deeper into the mystery. We are moving from the outer edges of the A-ring, past the gap, into the dense, bright heart of the B-ring. The patterns here become even more complex, more intricate. We see interference patterns, where waves from different moons cross each other, creating textures that look like woven silk or the cross-hatching of a fine sketch. This is the fabric of the cosmos. It is woven from gravity and time, suspended in the vacuum. It is a blanket of ice wrapped around the sleeping giant. And as we float above it, we can feel the comfort of that blanket. we are insulated from the cold, protected by the sheer density of the beauty before us. The illusion of the tilt, the mind-blowing complexity of the resonance, dissolves into a simple feeling of awe. We do not need to understand the mathematics to feel the peace. We only need to know that the moons are dancing, the rings are responding, and the universe is keeping track of it all. Nothing is lost. Every movement is recorded, every cycle is honored. So let us drift along the crest of the wave. Let us ride the spiral, sliding gently through the vacuum, carried by the memory of the moons. We are travelers in time now, moving across the physical record of the last century, floating over the frozen echoes of a gravitational song. The stars above are steady. The planet below is warm and golden. And here, in the midst of the rings, there is only the slow, silent turning of the wheel. We turn our gaze now away from the glittering, icy precision of the rings. We look outward, into the deeper dark, toward a world that has been waiting in the shadows. Drifting in the distance, suspended like a heavy fruit on a dark branch, is the giant moon, Titan. It is a world of secrets. Unlike the other moons, which are stark, white and cratered, naked rock exposed to the vacuum, Titan is wrapped in a thick, heavy blanket. It is shrouded in an impenetrable veil of orange mist. From the outside, it looks like a smooth, fuzzy sphere of apricot and gold, glowing softly against the black backdrop of space. It is the only moon in the solar system with a substantial atmosphere, a layer of nitrogen and clouds so dense that for centuries no human eye could see what lay beneath. It was a mystery, a locked room in the house of Saturn. But our vessel, Cassini, did not come alone. It carried a passenger, a smaller explorer designed specifically for this moment. Tucked against the side of the great spacecraft was the Huygens probe. It was a humble traveler shaped like a shield, a golden saucer meant to endure the unknown. It had slept for 7 years during the long journey from Earth, a silent companion waiting for its single, brief moment of awakening on Christmas Day in the year 2004. The time had come. With a gentle mechanical sigh, Springs released the probe. Huygens was cast adrift. It did not fire engines. It did not roar away. It simply pushed off, spinning slowly for stability, drifting away from the mothership into the void. For 22 days, it coasted in absolute silence. It was a lonely seed falling from a celestial tree, moving through the cold darkness toward the orange clouds that filled the horizon. Imagine that long, silent fall. There was no sound, only the slow rotation of the stars. The moon grew larger and larger, filling the view until it was no longer a moon, but a sky of deep, opaque haze. And then the atmosphere began. Huygens did not crash into Titan. It was embraced by it. The probe entered the upper layers of the nitrogen sky, feeling the first caress of the alien air. It was a transition from the nothingness of space to the substance of a world. Friction warmed the shield, a glowing ember descending into the cold. But this was not a violent burning. It was a shedding of speed, a slowing down, a surrender to the density of the new realm. High above the surface, the parachutes deployed. A great flower of white fabric bloomed in the orange twilight, and suddenly, the fall became a drift. The probe was no longer falling. It was floating. It hung in the sky, suspended by the thick, buoyant air of Titan. The atmosphere here is denser than Earth's, heavy and rich. It held the probe gently, allowing it to descend with agonizing slowness, a leisurely 2.5-hour journey down through the layers of smog. Let us descend with it. Close your eyes and imagine you are drifting down through that orange fog. At first, there is nothing but haze. You are immersed in a sea of tangerine clouds. The light from the distant sun is filtered, scattered, and softened until it becomes a uniform glowing twilight. There are no sharp shadows here. There is no harsh glare. Everything is bathed in a diffuse amber radiance. It is like being inside a lantern, or floating in the depths of a honey-colored ocean. As we sink lower, the mist begins to clear. The surface of the world starts to emerge from the gloom, and what we see is both alien and strangely familiar. We see landscapes that remind us of home, yet they are forged from materials that are utterly unearthly. We see rivers, great, winding channels carved into the land, branching and meandering like the veins of a leaf. But water does not flow here. The temperature is far too cold, nearly 180 degrees below zero. Water here is rock. It is frozen harder than granite, forming the bedrock of the mountains and the valleys. The liquid that flows in these rivers is methane. It is natural gas, condensed by the extreme cold into a clear, slow-moving liquid. It rains on Titan, but the rain does not fall in a rush. Because the gravity is low and the air is thick, the raindrops are large, perhaps the size of marbles, and they fall in slow motion. They drift down lazily, pattering softly against the ice rocks, feeding the rivers that flow into vast, silent lakes near the poles. Huygens saw these features as it drifted down. It saw hills of ice, sculpted by the wind and the rain. It saw dark plains that looked like dried lake beds, covered in dunes. But these dunes are not made of sand. They are made of dark, organic grains, hydrocarbons that have snowed down from the upper atmosphere over billions of years. They are soft dunes, rippled by the slow winds, stretching out like a dark sea under the orange sky. The probe continued to descend, swaying gently under its parachute. It was a lonely eye, scanning the horizon, capturing images of a world that had never been seen before. It saw a coastline, or what looked like one, where bright highlands met a dark, flat lowland. It looked like a shoreline on Earth, perhaps a beach in a dream, where the ocean is made of oil and the sand is made of ice. Finally, the ground approached. The scientists back on Earth had worried about this moment. They did not know if Huygens would land on hard ice or splash into a liquid methane sea. They had designed it to float, just in case. But Titan had a different surprise waiting. The landing was soft. There was no jarring impact, no crunch of metal. Huygens touched down on a surface that yielded slightly, like wet clay, or damp sand, or perhaps creme brulee. It settled into the soft, dark substance, resting comfortably on a floodplain strewn with rounded pebbles. These pebbles were made of water ice, smoothed by the flow of liquid methane over eons, looking exactly like river rocks you might find in a stream on Earth. And then it sat there. The journey was over. The probe had traveled over 1 billion kilometers to sit in this quiet, orange twilight. But Huygens did not just look. It listened. For the first time in history, we had ears on another world. The probe carried a microphone, and it recorded the sounds of Titan. What does a moon sound like? It sounds like the wind. The recording that came back to Earth is a haunting, hollow whisper. It is a low, rushing sound, the sound of the thick nitrogen atmosphere moving over the microphone. Hush, whoosh. It is the breath of the planet. It is a lonely sound, yes, but it is also deeply peaceful. It is the sound of a world that is asleep, a world where the wind blows through valleys of ice where no foot has ever stepped. It is the sound of solitude. Imagine standing there, next to the probe. The sky above you is a heavy, consistent orange. The sun is just a bright patch in the haze, unable to pierce the veil. The light is dim, like a cloudy afternoon in late autumn. The air is still, save for that gentle breeze. It is cold, impossibly cold, but you do not feel it. You only feel the stillness. Titan is a mirror of Earth, but a mirror seen through a dark and frozen glass. It has rain, it has rivers, it has lakes, it has an atmosphere that protects it. It is a world that breathes and changes, a dynamic, living system hidden beneath its mask of clouds. Scientists call it a prebiotic laboratory, a glimpse of what Earth might have been like before life began, frozen in a deep, deep freeze. But in this moment, let us not think of the chemistry, let us think of the feeling. Titan is a place of deep slumber. The methane lakes are smooth as glass, reflecting the dark sky. The Ligeia Mare and Kraken Mare, names given to these alien seas, are vast and silent. There are no waves crashing on their shores, only a gentle lapping, a slow rise and fall of the liquid levels as the seasons change over Saturn's long 30-year year. Huygens survived on the surface for about 72 minutes before its batteries faded and the cold overcame it. It sent back its precious images, its sounds, its data. And then it went to sleep. It is still there today. It rests on that dark plain, covered perhaps by a fine layer of organic dust that has fallen since its arrival. It is a permanent monument to our curiosity, a small golden artifact resting in the garden of the orange mist. The Cassini spacecraft, watching from above, continued to study this world for years. It used radar to peer through the clouds, mapping the seas of the north, discovering that they are deep and vast. It found that the atmosphere breathes, expanding and contracting. It found a world that is not dead, but dreaming. Titan reminds us that the universe is full of variety, full of echoes. It tells us that the familiar shapes of nature, the river, the mountain, the rain, can exist in forms we never imagined. It tells us that even in the freezing cold of the outer solar system, there is motion, there is a cycle. There is a hydrological rhythm, even if the water is gas and the rock is ice. As we pull away from Titan, rising back up through the haze, we leave Huygens to its eternal rest. The orange clouds close beneath us, hiding the surface once more. The moon becomes a sphere again, a silent sentinel orbiting the Ringed Kingdom. It glows softly in the dark, keeping its secrets, wrapped in its thick, warm-colored blanket, drifting slowly through the cold, infinite night. The mist remains. The wind continues to blow, and the silence of Titan endures, a deep, heavy silence that invites us to close our eyes and drift along with it. We leave behind the heavy, orange mists of Titan. We rise up through the haze, leaving the nitrogen winds and the liquid methane lakes to their slumber, and we turn our vessel back toward the light. As we drift closer to the heart of the Saturnian system, a new world emerges from the darkness. It is small, much smaller than Titan, but it shines with a brilliance that is almost blinding. It is the brightest object in the solar system, a perfect sphere of pure, reflective white. This is Enceladus. If Titan is a world of shadows and mystery, Enceladus is a world of light and clarity. It looks like a polished pearl dropped into a sea of black velvet. Its surface is covered entirely in fresh, clean ice. It reflects almost all the sunlight that touches it, making it glow with a cold, radiant intensity. There is no atmosphere to dim the view here, no smog to hide the ground. There is only the stark, beautiful contrast of white ice against the black sky. As we approach, the surface resolves into details of stunning geological grace. We see vast plains of smooth ice, untouched by craters, which tells us that this surface is young. It is being renewed, resurfaced by some internal process that keeps it fresh and bright. We see cracks and ridges that crisscross the moon like the delicate veins in a leaf, or the crazing on a piece of fine antique porcelain. But the true wonder of Enceladus lies at its southern pole. Here the ice is fractured by 4 long parallel fissures. Scientists have given them the name tiger stripes, but they do not look like the marks of a predator. They look like vents, like open windows into the deep interior of the moon. And from these fractures, something magical is happening. Enceladus is breathing. From deep within the moon, jets of water vapor and icy particles are erupting into space. They shoot upward in silent, majestic plumes, rising hundreds of kilometers above the surface. These are not violent explosions of fire and ash. They are geysers of cold mist, fountains of the purest water shooting into the vacuum. They rise up, catch the sunlight, and sparkle like diamonds. Imagine floating there, hovering just above the South Pole. You would see a curtain of fine spray rising constantly into the sky. It is a slow, steady exhalation. This moon is not a dead rock. It is active. It is alive with geological energy. The gravity of Saturn needs the core of this tiny moon, stretching and squeezing it as it orbits, generating friction and heat deep inside. This heat melts the ice beneath the crust, creating a global ocean of liquid water that stays warm even in the freezing depths of space. This is the secret of Enceladus. Beneath that frozen shell, there is a warm, salty sea. It is a hidden cradle, protected from the cold of the universe by kilometers of ice. And through the cracks in the south, the pressure of that ocean forces the water out, sending it spraying into the cosmos. Cassini, in its daring curiosity, flew directly through these plumes. It did not just observe them from a distance, it tasted them. It dipped its sensors into the mist and found water, salt, and organic molecules. It found the ingredients of life drifting in the vacuum. It was a moment of profound connection, a robotic explorer from Earth, touching the water of an alien ocean without ever landing. But the story of this water does not end when it leaves the moon. The gravity of Enceladus is weak, too weak to hold on to all of this spray. While some of the ice falls back to the surface as fine snow, keeping the moon bright and white, much of it escapes entirely. It drifts outward, spreading into a vast, diffuse torus around Saturn. This is the birth of the E-ring. Of all Saturn's rings, the E-ring is the most ethereal. It is not a flat, dense sheet, like the B-ring. It is a wide, ghostly halo of microscopic dust. It is extremely tenuous, so faint that it is almost invisible unless you are looking at it with the sun behind it, backlit so that the dust glows. And it is blue. It is perhaps the bluest, naturally occurring object in the solar system. A ring of frozen sapphire dust created by the breath of a single small moon. Enceladus orbits right in the middle of this ring. It travels along the very path it creates. It is a gardener that walks within its own garden, constantly replenishing the ring with fresh ice. As we watch this process in our minds, we see a cycle of beautiful generosity. The moon gives of itself to beautify the planet. It releases its inner ocean to build a halo around the giant. Cassini captured this relationship in one of its most remarkable time-lapse sequences. Over a 14-hour period, we can watch the plumes erupting, disturbing the density of the ring, feeding it, keeping it alive. We can see the pulse of the geysers, the rhythmic expulsion of material that ensures the E-ring never fades away. There is also a hidden connection here, one that cannot be seen with the eyes but can be heard with the instruments of science. Enceladus and Saturn are linked by an invisible tether. The moon is electrically active. As the plumes erupt, they create a cloud of charged plasma. Cassini's magnetometer detected a bending of the magnetic field lines around the moon. A disturbance in the force caused by this cloud. This creates a plasma circuit, a current of electricity that flows between the moon and the planet. It is like a song. Enceladus is singing to Saturn, sending waves of energy down the magnetic field lines, touching the atmosphere of the giant. It is a relationship of deep intimacy, a plasma bridge that connects the mother planet to its child. The audio converted from these plasma waves sounds eerie and rhythmic, a series of rising and falling tones that echo the orbital dance of the two worlds. But let us return to the visual. Let us return to the quiet beauty of the ice. Enceladus reminds us that size does not equal significance. It is a tiny moon, barely 500 kilometers across. You could fit it comfortably within the borders of a single country on Earth. And yet, it is the creator of the largest ring. It is the source of the most promising environment for life beyond our home. It is a powerhouse of activity wrapped in a package of modest white ice. As we drift away from Enceladus, looking back at it, we see it as a crescent. The sun catches the edge of the moon, illuminating the plumes from behind. They look like wings of light, or a halo of mist crowning the southern pole. The E-ring stretches out from it in both directions, a fading trail of blue dust that marks the path of the traveler. The feeling here is one of cold purity. There is no mud, no dust, no decay. There is only water in all its forms. Liquid in the deep, warm ocean, solid in the hard white crust, and vapor in the rising plumes. It is a hydrological cycle played out in the vacuum. It is a clean, frozen world where the water is as hard as rock and the volcanoes erupt with snow. Cassini spent a great deal of time here, drawn back again and again by the allure of the plumes. It was a courtship between the spacecraft and the moon, a dance of flybys that brought us closer to the truth of what lies beneath. And even though Cassini is gone, Enceladus continues its work. Right now, in the silence of the outer solar system, the plumes are still erupting. The geysers are still spraying their fine mist into the dark. The ocean is still sloshing beneath the ice, warm and waiting. And the E-ring is still being built, particle by particle, breath by breath. The universe does not stop, because we are not watching. It continues its long, slow rhythm of creation. We can take comfort in that consistency. We can rest in the knowledge that far away, in the quiet dark, there is a moon that is watering the rings. There is a small, bright world that is keeping a candle lit in the shadows of Saturn. It is a beacon of potential, a symbol of the hidden warmth that exists even in the coldest places. Let the image of that white sphere dissolve slowly in your mind. Let the blue haze of the E-ring fade into the black. We are moving on, drifting further inward, carried by the gravity of the giant. But we carry with us the memory of the ice. We carry the freshness of the plumes. We carry the peace of a world that is nothing but light and water. The journey continues. The king of planets awaits. But for a moment, we have touched the treasure of the kingdom. We have felt the icy breath of Enceladus, and it has cooled our thoughts and calmed our spirits. We have wandered through the realms of ice and fire, from the silent rings to the misty moons. Now, let us ascend. We guide our vessel upward, climbing higher and higher above the plane of the equator, moving toward the very top of the world. We are approaching the North Pole of Saturn. In the vast, chaotic weather systems of the universe, we usually expect to see curves. We expect spirals, circles, and ovals, shapes that flow naturally, like water going down a drain. But here, at the crown of the Ringed Kingdom, Saturn defies our expectations. It presents us with a shape of impossible perfection. It presents us with geometry. Looking down upon the North Pole, we do not see a circle, we see a hexagon. It is a six-sided polygon of staggering proportions, etched into the clouds as if drawn by a celestial architect. It is a feature so distinct, so sharp, and so persistent that it seems almost artificial, yet it is a purely natural phenomenon, born from the complex fluid dynamics of the gas giant. It is a crown of clouds spinning slowly, endlessly, around the pole. To understand the majesty of this structure, we must understand its scale. This is not a local storm. It is a planetary feature. The hexagon is vast. It is nearly 30,000 kilometers wide. You could take the entire Earth, our mountains, our oceans, our cities, everything we have ever known, and place it inside this hexagon with room to spare. Each of its 6 straight sides is longer than the diameter of our home planet, stretching for nearly 14,000 kilometers. It is a room of wind so large that it challenges the imagination. A colossal temple of air built at the roof of the world. The most hypnotic quality of the hexagon is its stillness. Not the stillness of lack of motion, but the stillness of permanence. While the clouds within it are whipping around at immense speeds, the shape itself remains fixed. It does not wobble. It does not drift like the other storms on the planet. It rotates in perfect sync with the deep interior of Saturn. It is a standing wave, a pattern that has found its equilibrium and refuses to let go. For decades, we have watched it. Voyager saw it in the early 80s, and when Cassini arrived more than 20 years later, the hexagon was still there. It had not faded. It had not lost its sharp corners. It is a constant in a world of change, a symbol of stability amidst the swirling chaos of the gas giant's atmosphere. Let us drift closer to the boundaries of this shape. The sides of the hexagon are formed by a jet stream, a river of air flowing at hundreds of kilometers per hour. But unlike the meandering jet streams on Earth, which wander and loop. This stream has locked itself into a rigid, geometric path. It turns a sharp corner, flows straight, turns another corner. It is a six-sided barrier that separates the polar region from the rest of the planet, keeping the air inside trapped in a solitary confinement of cold and dark. Inside this geometric wall, the atmosphere is different. It is a separate kingdom. The haze particles here are smaller, the clouds are deeper, and at the very center, at the precise point of the pole, sits the eye. It is a polar vortex, a massive hurricane that sits directly over the North Pole. But unlike hurricanes on Earth that drift across the ocean seeking heat, this vortex is anchored. It has nowhere to go. It spins in place, a great swirling drain of dark red and black. It is the navel of the world, the axis around which the entire hexagon rotates. The eye is calm, deep, and terrifyingly beautiful. It looks like a deep red rose blooming in the center of a garden of gold. The colors of this region are a story in themselves, a story of time and seasons played out on a grand scale. Saturn moves slowly around the Sun. Its year is long, lasting nearly 30 Earth years. This means that each season on Saturn lasts for more than 7 years. For 7 years, the North Pole is tilted toward the Sun, bathed in constant daylight. For the next 7 years, it is tilted away, plunged into a long, dark winter. When Cassini first arrived, it was winter in the north. The pole was in shadow. The hexagon was blue. It was a deep, cool azure, the color of the ocean at twilight. This blue was not the blue of water, but the blue of scattering light, caused by the lack of photochemical haze. The long darkness had allowed the atmosphere to clear, revealing the pure color of the gas beneath. But as the mission continued, time marched on. Spring came to the north, and then summer. Slowly, imperceptibly, the color began to shift. As the sunlight returned to the pole, it reacted with the methane in the atmosphere. It triggered a photochemical reaction, producing a golden haze. Year by year, the blue faded, replaced by a warm, glowing gold. The hexagon changed its coat. It went from a creature of the cold ocean to a creature of the golden sun. Cassini watched this transformation. It saw the North Pole light up. It saw the hexagon reveal itself fully in the sunlight, casting long shadows across the cloud tops. We can see images where the sun is low on the horizon, catching the raised ridges of the hexagon's walls, highlighting the relief of the clouds. We can see that this is not just a flat pattern. It is a three-dimensional structure. The clouds within the hexagon are layered, stacked on top of each other like plates, swirling in their own independent currents. Scientists have tried to explain this shape. They have built models in laboratories, spinning tanks of water at different speeds to recreate the fluid dynamics of Saturn. They have found that under the right conditions, fluids naturally form polygons. They can form triangles, squares, and yes, hexagons. It is a fundamental property of nature, a result of the difference in speed between the winds at the pole and the winds further out. But knowing the physics does not diminish the wonder. If anything, it deepens it. It tells us that the universe has a preference for order. It tells us that out of the chaos of a billion swirling atoms, structure will emerge. The hexagon is a visible manifestation of the laws of physics, painting on a canvas of clouds. It is math made visible. As we hover above this great geometric storm, looking down into the eye, we feel a sense of hypnotic calm. The motion is so regular, so repetitive. Round and round it goes, turning once every 10.5 hours, the heartbeat of the planet. It is a rhythm that you can sync your breathing to. Inhale as the corner of the hexagon approaches. Exhale as it passes. Inhale, exhale. There is no sound here but the rush of the wind, a constant white noise hum that blankets the world. The violence of the storm is lost in the scale of it. From this height, it does not look like a storm at all. It looks like a mandala, a meditation aid spinning in the sky. We can see smaller storms, little white vortices, popping up around the edges of the hexagon, carried along by the jet stream. They are transient, appearing and disappearing like bubbles in a stream, but the hexagon remains. It is the frame that holds the picture. It is the boundary that defines the north. There is something comforting about its longevity. In our lives, things change so quickly. Weather changes daily. Landscapes change yearly. But on Saturn, the hexagon is an elder. It has been spinning there since before we were born, and it will likely be spinning there long after we are gone. It is a monument of air that has outlasted empires of stone. Let us drift a little higher, pulling back until the hexagon becomes a part of the whole. We see the gold of the pole blending into the creams and browns of the lower latitudes. We see the subtle banding of the atmosphere, the stripes of the king, and we see the shadow of the planet stretching out into the rings behind it. The pole is a lonely place, isolated by its wall of wind. But it is also a place of great beauty. It is where the auroras dance. High above the clouds, in the invisible magnetosphere, the northern lights of Saturn shimmer. They are not like the green curtains of Earth. They are often ultraviolet, invisible to the human eye, but clear to the senses of Cassini. They form a glowing ring around the pole, a halo of energy that sits directly above the hexagon. It is a double crown, a crown of clouds below, and a crown of light above. Imagine the silence of that light. The ghostly flicker of the aurora, dancing in the vacuum, mirroring the rotation of the storm below. It is a conversation between the sun and the planet, a transfer of energy that results in a silent, spectacular light show. We let the gravity of the planet pull us down along the longitudes, drifting back toward the equator. But we take with us the image of that perfect shape. We take with us the knowledge that in the wildest places of the universe, there is still order. There is still geometry. The hexagon fades into the distance, becoming a golden cap on the top of the world. It continues its slow, majestic rotation, guarding the pole, watching the stars. It is the eternal hexagon, the unblinking eye of the Ringed Kingdom, spinning in the quiet dark, forever and always. We have seen the rings. We have walked the moons. We have watched the storms. But to truly know the Ringed Kingdom, we must look past what the eyes can see. We must tune our senses to the invisible. We must listen to the silence of the vacuum and find the song hidden within it. Surrounding Saturn, extending far beyond the rings and the farthest moons, is a vast, invisible bubble. It is the magnetosphere. It is a shield of energy, a colossal force field generated by the deep, churning heart of the planet. It protects the kingdom from the solar wind, deflecting the harsh particles of the sun and creating a safe harbor in the storm of space. Cassini did not just look at Saturn, it felt Saturn. As the spacecraft drifted through the darkness, its instruments picked up the subtle tremors of this magnetic web. It detected a pulse, a rhythm, a heartbeat that beats in the silence. For a long time, this heartbeat was a mystery. On Earth, we measure a day by the rising and setting of the sun. We watch the ground turn beneath our feet. But on Saturn, there is no ground. There are only clouds, and the clouds are restless wanderers, moving at different speeds, driven by winds that never stop. We cannot trust the clouds to tell the time. So, scientists look to the magnetic field. On most planets, the magnetic pole is tilted, slightly off-center from the spin of the planet itself. As the planet rotates, the magnetic field wobbles, like a lighthouse beam sweeping across the dark. By watching this wobble, we can count the turns. We can measure the day. But Saturn, in its infinite elegance, refused to be so simple. When Cassini arrived, it found something that defied expectation. The magnetic pole of Saturn is not tilted. It is perfectly, impossibly aligned with the axis of rotation. The error is less than 0.1 degrees. It is a divine alignment, a spinning top that spins with such precision that it appears motionless. There is no wobble. There is no lighthouse beam. To the magnetic eye, the planet appears smooth and silent, hiding its rotation behind a veil of symmetry. It is a cloaking shimmer. The planet is spinning, massive and fast, but it hides its true motion from us. It keeps its day a secret. For years, the scientists were baffled. They listened to the radio waves, the Saturn kilometric radiation, hoping to find a rhythm. They heard the radio volume rise and fall, a pulsing beat that seemed to suggest a day of 10 hours and 39 minutes. But then, the pulse changed. Over the 13 years of Cassini's voyage, the rhythm slowed down. It drifted. A planet does not slow down that easily. A core of rock and metal does not change its spin on a whim. The heartbeat we were hearing was not the heart of the planet. It was the song of the seasons, the shifting winds of the plasma clouds, a mask worn by the giant to confuse the observer. This mystery adds to the sleepy allure of the world. It is a place where time itself is fluid, where the length of a day is a secret kept by the core. It reminds us that we do not need to measure everything. We do not need to count every second. In the Ringed Kingdom, time flows not in ticks and tocks, but in eras and eons. Eventually, the answer came from the most unlikely of places, the rings. The rings, those silent watchers, felt the gravity of the turning planet. They felt the slight imperfections in the giant's shape, and by measuring the tiny microscopic ripples in the sea ring, the waves driven by gravity rather than magnetism, we finally heard the true heartbeat. 10 hours, 33 minutes, and 38 seconds. That is the length of a Saturnian day. It is a fast rhythm for such a large world. The giant is spinning rapidly, yet it carries its bulk with such grace that it seems to float. But the magnetosphere is not just a clock. It is an orchestra. Space is not silent to those who know how to listen. Saturn sings. It emits a constant stream of radio waves, eerie and beautiful songs that drift through the cosmos. These are not sounds that travel through air, for there is no air in space. They are electromagnetic waves captured by Cassini's antennas and converted into audio so that our human ears might understand them. If you were to listen to the sounds of Saturn, you would not hear a melody. You would hear a haunting, rising, and falling tone. It sounds like the wind howling through a deserted canyon. It sounds like the chirping of alien birds in a digital forest. The tones slide up and down, echoing the complex interactions between the planet, the moons, and the solar wind. One of the most profound sounds Cassini recorded was the crossing of the bow shock. This is the boundary where the magnetic field of Saturn meets the solar wind. It is the wall of the castle. Inside, the magnetic field reigns supreme. Outside, the sun dominates. As Cassini crossed this threshold, the audio shifts. It goes from the chaotic roar of the solar wind to a sudden deep calm, and then into the rich, textured soundscape of the magnetosphere. It is the sound of entering a new room. It is the sound of coming home. And then there is the chorus of the moons. We learned that Enceladus does not just spray water, it sprays electricity. As it moves through the magnetic field, it acts like a dynamo, generating a current of plasma that flows back to Saturn. The moon and the planet are connected by an invisible tether of energy, a flux tube that hums with power. The sound of this connection is a rhythmic, static hiss, a song of connection between mother and child. Even the storms sing. The great white spots, those massive eruptions of clouds, generate lightning bolts 10,000 times more powerful than anything on Earth. These bolts release bursts of radio energy. Cassini heard them as crackles and pops, like a fire burning in a hearth, interrupting the smooth hum of the planetary song. These sounds remind us that the universe is alive with energy. It is vibrating. Even in the deepest sleep, there is a pulse. The silence of space is only a perception. Underneath it, there is a symphony of fields and waves, playing a song that has no beginning and no end. This invisible energy has one final, spectacular visual manifestation: the auroras. We drift now toward the poles, into the shadow of the planet. Here, in the eternal night of the polar winter, the magnetic field reveals itself in light. High above the clouds, hundreds of kilometers up in the tenuous thermosphere, the sky is burning. On Earth, our auroras are green and fleeting. On Saturn, they are vast curtains of ultraviolet fire. They form a permanent oval around the pole, a glowing crown of electric blue and violet. They dance, they ripple, they brighten and dim in response to the invisible winds of space. Imagine floating in the darkness above the pole. Below you is the hexagonal storm, a dark, swirling shape in the clouds. Above it, hanging like a ghost, is the aurora. It is a ring of fire that does not burn. It creates no heat, only light. It swirls in a counterclockwise direction, mirroring the rotation of the planet below. These lights are caused by the energetic particles trapped in the magnetic field. Particles from the sun and particles from the volcanoes of Enceladus crashing into the atmosphere. It is the sky itself glowing with excitement. It is a visual echo of the hidden pulse. The sight is mesmerizing. It is silent, slow, and ethereal. The curtains of light fold and unfold, draping the planet in a veil of cosmic energy. It feels spiritual, a reminder that we are watching the interactions of forces so large and so powerful that they dwarf our understanding. The auroras of Saturn are not just a reaction to the sun. They are driven by the planet's own rotation. They are a display of internal power. Even in the dark, Saturn shines. It creates its own light. It wears its magnetic field like a garment of shimmering silk. As we watch the lights dance, we feel the true nature of this world. It is a giant of gas and fluid, yes, but it is also a giant of energy. It is a dynamo spinning in the dark. It is a broadcaster sending its song out to the stars. It is a kingdom protected by an invisible wall, crowned with a halo of ultraviolet light. We are suspended here in the glow of the aurora. The hidden pulse of the planet moves through us. We do not need to see the magnetic lines to know they are there. We can feel the presence of the giant. We can feel the slow, steady rhythm of the 10-hour day, ticking away in the heart of the system. The mystery of the rotation, the eerie songs of the radio waves, the ghostly dance of the lights, they all tell us the same thing. They tell us that there is more to this world than meets the eye. There is a spirit to the machine. There is a life to the gas. So let the sounds wash over you. Let the rising and falling tones of the Saturnian song lull you deeper into relaxation. Let the image of the blue aurora soothe your mind. You are safe inside the magnetosphere. You are protected from the solar wind. You are held in the invisible embrace of the Ringed Kingdom. The pulse is steady. The song is quiet. The light is soft. Drift on this current of energy. Drift into the mystery. The hidden heartbeat of Saturn is beating for you, slow and strong, in the deep, quiet night. We have spent our time soaring above the clouds, watching the storms and the lights from the safety of the vacuum. But to truly understand the Ringed Kingdom, we must accept a strange and beautiful truth. There is no place to land. If you were to descend through the golden mists of Saturn, searching for a solid surface, you would search forever. There is no rocky ground waiting to catch you. There are no continents, no islands, no shores. Saturn is a world built entirely of fluid and gas, a planet that refuses to be solid. It is a realm where the sky simply becomes the ocean, without ever breaking the surface. Let us imagine, just for a moment, let us imagine that we are drifting down, sinking slowly into the body of the giant. We begin in the upper atmosphere, the realm of the ammonia clouds. Here, the world is yellow and pale. It is cold, freezing cold, and the winds are whipping past at speeds that would tear a hurricane apart on Earth. But as we sink lower, the wind begins to quiet. The light from the distant sun, already weak, begins to fade. We are entering the twilight zone of the planet. The clouds around us change color. They deepen into browns, into ochres, into deep, rich creams. We are passing through layers of sulfur and water ice, clouds that are thicker and heavier than anything we know. The pressure begins to build. It wraps around us like a heavy blanket. It is not a crushing weight, but a firm, steady embrace. It is the weight of the atmosphere above us, the atmosphere of a world 95 times more massive than Earth. As we descend deeper, the light vanishes completely. We are now in the eternal night of the interior, but it is not cold here. Surprisingly, it is getting warmer. We are moving closer to the hearth, and then something miraculous happens. We stop falling through gas, and we start floating in liquid. But there is no splash. There is no moment where we hit the water. On Saturn, the transition is seamless. The immense pressure forces the hydrogen gas to become denser and denser until, without any clear boundary, it becomes a liquid. We are now drifting in the hydrogen ocean. It is a sea without a surface, a vast global ocean of liquid hydrogen that covers the entire planet. It is dark, it is warm, and it is silent. We are thousands of kilometers deep now. The chaos of the storms above is a distant memory. Here, in the deep dark, everything is slow. Everything is heavy. But the journey is not over. We sink further, deeper into the crushing dark. The pressure becomes unimaginable. It strips the electrons from the hydrogen atoms. The liquid stops acting like water and starts acting like metal. We have entered the layer of metallic hydrogen. This is a state of matter that exists only in the hearts of giants. It is a liquid metal ocean, conducting electricity like a copper wire. This is the dynamo. This is the source of the magnetic field we felt earlier. As this metallic ocean swirls and flows, churned by the heat from below, it generates the immense protective bubble that surrounds the planet. Imagine floating in a sea of liquid metal. It is conductive, fluid, and shining in the dark with its own internal heat. It is here, in this strange, high-pressure forge, that scientists believe a rare and beautiful phenomenon occurs. It rains diamonds. In the atmospheres above, lightning storms turn methane gas into soot, pure carbon. As this soot falls, it hardens into graphite, and then, as the pressure builds, it is crushed into diamond. Millions of tiny diamonds, perhaps some as large as your hand, drifting slowly down through the liquid metal layers. They are not jagged or rough. The journey has smoothed them. They are perfect, glittering stones falling in the dark, a wealth of gems that no human hand will ever touch. They fall towards the center, toward the core. At the very center of the Ringed Kingdom, beneath the thousands of kilometers of gas and metal, there is a heart. It is a core of rock and ice and metal squeezed into a dense ball. It is incredibly hot, more than 11,000 degrees Celsius, twice as hot as the surface of the sun. This heat is the secret life of Saturn. The planet radiates more energy into space than it receives from the sun. It is a star that failed to ignite, a glowing ember that is still cooling down from its birth 4 billion years ago. It keeps the planet warm from the inside out. It drives the winds, it feeds the storms, and it keeps the hydrogen ocean liquid. Down here, at the core, time loses its meaning. On the surface, we struggled to measure the day. The clouds moved at different speeds. The equator spun faster than the poles. Time was fluid, stretching and compressing with the winds. We learned that a day on Saturn is 10 hours, 33 minutes, and 38 seconds. But down here, in the dense, heavy center, there is only the slow, rhythmic rotation of the giant. The core holds the truth of the planet. It anchors the gravity. It anchors the magnetic field. It is the steady pivot point around which the entire magnificent system revolves. Let us ascend now. The pressure is too great for us to stay. We let the buoyancy lift us, rising back up through the rain of diamonds, up through the sea of liquid metal, up through the darkening ocean of hydrogen. We emerge back into the gas. We rise through the cream and brown clouds. We break through the haze layer and see the sunlight again. It looks different now. We see it not as a distant star, but as a partner. We understand that Saturn is a world of layers, a world of depth. We understand that what we see from the outside, the beautiful rings, the golden bands, is just the skin of the fruit. The real Saturn is inside. It is the weight. It is the heat. It is the liquid metal flowing in the dark. This interior is a place of ultimate privacy. The rings are a public display, open for all the universe to see. But the core is hidden. It is wrapped in thousands of kilometers of clouds to ensure that its secrets remain kept. It is a place of silence and solitude, where the laws of physics are pushed to their absolute limit. There is a comfort in knowing that such a place exists, a place where diamonds fall like rain, a place where metal flows like water, a place that generates its own warmth in the cold vacuum of space. As we drift back into orbit, looking down at the opaque clouds, we feel a new respect for the giant. It is not just a ball of gas. It is a complex, layered organism. It breathes heat. It sweats rain. It has a heartbeat of magnetic energy. We are floating again in the vacuum, safe and light. The gravity that crushed the carbon into diamond now holds us gently in our path. We have seen the crown, and we have imagined the heart. The mystery of Saturn's day, the mystery of its heat, the mystery of its magnetic field, they are all connected to that deep, unseen interior. The planet is a single, cohesive system, from the highest ring particle to the deepest drop of liquid metal. Rest in this knowledge. The universe is deep. It has layers upon layers of wonder waiting to be found. And you, drifting here in the quiet of your mind, are free to explore them all, safe in the knowledge that you can always return to the light. The planet turns beneath us. The core spins. The diamonds fall. And the journey continues. All journeys, no matter how long or how beautiful, must eventually find their way home. We have spent 20 years traveling through the dark. We have drifted past Jupiter. We have looped around the moons, and we have traced the spiral waves of the rings. But time is a river that flows in only one direction. By the year 2017, our faithful traveler, the Cassini spacecraft, was beginning to feel the weight of its age. The fuel that had powered its thrusters, allowing it to dance among the moons, was running low. The mission planners back on Earth faced a choice. They could let the vessel drift aimlessly, a ghost ship wandering the outer darkness forever, or they could give it an ending worthy of its majestic life. They chose the latter. They chose to let Cassini become one with the kingdom it had explored. This decision was born from a place of respect. We had discovered that the moons Enceladus and Titan were precious worlds, potential cradles for life with their hidden oceans and organic rains. To let a spacecraft which might still carry the faint microbial fingerprints of Earth crash into these pristine gardens would be a tragedy. We had to protect them. And so the decision was made to send Cassini into the only place that could hold it safely forever, Saturn itself. But before the end, there was one last adventure, one final daring chapter that we call the grand finale. On April 22nd, 2017, Cassini did something no spacecraft had ever done before. It used the gravity of Titan to slingshot itself into a new, perilous path. It leapt over the main rings. It climbed high above the plane of ice and then dove down, threading the needle between the planet and the inner edge of the rings. Imagine the view from that dive. For 13 years we had looked at the rings from the outside. Now we were inside. We were flying through a gap barely 2,000 kilometers wide. Above us, the rings formed a colossal ceiling of glittering ice, stretching across the sky like a highway of diamonds. Below us, The golden clouds of Saturn churned and swirled, filling the entire field of vision. We were flying in the Big Empty, a zone of silence between the crown and the king. For 22 weeks, Cassini repeated this dive. 22 times it looped around the planet, skimming the upper atmosphere, tasting the outer edges of the sky. Each orbit brought it closer. Each dive was a little deeper, a little more intimate. It was a long, slow spiraling in, a courtship that was drawing to its inevitable conclusion. During these final loops, the spacecraft collected its most precious gifts. It mapped the gravity of the planet with unprecedented precision. It tasted the dust falling from the rings into the atmosphere. It measured the magnetic heartbeat of the core, closer than ever before. It was as if Cassini was trying to learn every last secret, to memorize the texture of the planet before the lights went out. And then, the final day arrived. It was September 15th, 2017. The sun rose on Saturn just as it had for billions of years, casting its pale light across the cloud tops. But for Cassini, this orbit would not loop back out. This path led only down. The spacecraft turned its antenna toward Earth, one last time. It was 1 billion kilometers away, a tiny speck of metal against the giant. It did not take photos on this final day. The bandwidth was too precious, the time too short. Instead, it configured its instruments to taste and smell the atmosphere, to stream data back in real time until the very last second. As it approached the planet, the speed was immense. It was traveling at 123,000 kilometers per hour. But in the silence of space, speed does not feel like rushing. It feels like a swift, smooth drift. It feels like falling into a dream. The first wisps of the atmosphere began to brush against the hull. These were the mustard clouds, the upper layers of haze that wrap the planet in its golden cloak. At first, the resistance was gentle, like a hand softly catching a falling leaf. But as the seconds ticked by, the air grew thicker. The friction began to build. Cassini felt the warmth. The cold of space, which had been its companion for 2 decades, was replaced by the heat of entry. The spacecraft began to glow. It was becoming a meteor, a shooting star in the skies of Saturn. But it did not surrender easily. It fought to stay awake. It fought to keep talking to us. The thrusters fired at maximum capacity, pulsing rapidly to keep the antenna locked on Earth. It was a heroic effort, a machine struggling against the wind to whisper its final words home. "I am here," it seemed to say. "I can feel the wind. I can taste the helium. I am measuring the magnetic field. I am still here." For a minute or so, it held on. It sampled the atmosphere directly, sending back the first ever taste of Saturn's true air. But the planet is a giant, and the giant's embrace is overwhelming. The atmosphere thickened. The tumble began. The thrusters could no longer fight the torque of the wind. The antenna drifted away from Earth. The link was broken. The signal, which had traveled across the solar system for so long, flatlined. On Earth, in the control room, the screens went still. The green waves turned to straight lines. There was a moment of profound silence. But up there, in the clouds, the journey was not ending. It was transforming. As Cassini tumbled, the heat intensified. The metal warmed, then softened, then melted. The spacecraft did not crash into a surface. There is no ground to hit. Instead, it dissolved. It broke apart, first into pieces, then into fragments, and finally into atoms. Think of this not as destruction, but as a merger. The aluminum, the gold, the silicon, the plutonium, every atom that made up the traveler was released into the winds of Saturn. Cassini became a cloud. It became part of the atmosphere. It became a permanent addition to the mass of the planet. The spacecraft that had watched the storms was now part of the storm. The vessel that had studied the winds was now flowing with them. It had achieved the ultimate goal of any explorer, to become one with the world it explored. Now Cassini drifts in the dark, warm currents of the interior. Its atoms are circulating in the great bands of the atmosphere. Perhaps some of them will rain down as diamonds into the deep core. Perhaps some will rise up to shimmer in the auroras at the North Pole. It is everywhere. It is the wind. It is the rain. It is the planet. Back on Earth, the radio waves from those final moments continued to arrive for 83 minutes after the spacecraft was gone. We listened to the echo of a ghost. We received the final packet of data, the last testament of a faithful servant. And then, the transmission ended. But is it really over? The data Cassini sent back is vast, a library of information that we are still reading today. 4,000 research papers have been written, and more are being written every year. The discoveries continue. We are still finding new secrets in the numbers, new mysteries in the images. In that sense, the mission never stopped. It just changed form. It moved from the sky to the archives, from the vacuum of space to the minds of humanity, and the planet remains. Saturn is still there, spinning in the velvet night. The rings are still glowing. The moons are still dancing. The hexagon is still turning at the pole. The silence of the outer solar system has returned, deep and heavy, wrapping the kingdom in peace once more. We can look up at the night sky, find the small golden dot of Saturn, and know that a piece of us is there. We have touched it. We have left a mark, not a scar, but a caress. We have sent our eyes and ears across the ocean of night, and we have been welcomed. The grand finale was not a curtain call. It was a union. It was the moment the observer became the observed. It was the moment the separation between Earth and Saturn vanished, bridged by the sacrifice of a machine that taught us how to love the dark. So let the image of the dive fade gently. Do not see fire, see light. Do not hear a crash, hear a sigh. See the spacecraft dissolving into mist, spreading out like ink in water, becoming part of the eternal flow of the giant. It is safe now. It is home. The long voyage is over. The traveler rests in the heart of the kingdom, held forever in the final gentle embrace of the ringed planet. The silence has returned to the Saturnian system. The probe is gone, dissolved into the golden winds of the giant. But the story does not end with the fading of a radio signal. In the sleepy science of the cosmos, an ending is often just a new kind of beginning. The final embrace was not merely a moment of destruction. It was a moment of profound revelation. It was the moment the traveler stopped looking at the world and finally understood it. Let us linger here in the quiet aftermath to unpack the treasures that were gathered in those final daring weeks. During the grand finale, as Cassini looped 22 times through the gap between the planet and the rings, it discovered something that surprised the listeners back on Earth. We had expected this region to be dusty, filled with dangerous particles falling from the rings. We thought the gap would be a chaotic storm of ice and rock. But as the spacecraft flew through that narrow corridor, the big, empty, it found stillness. It was quiet. The space between the crown and the king was remarkably clear. It was a region of unexpected peace. This silence allowed the spacecraft to taste the atmosphere with a clarity we never imagined possible. It was not buffeted by debris. It was able to glide smooth and steady, collecting the finest grains of data. And what did it find in that silence? It found rain. But this is not the rain of Titan, nor the water of Enceladus. This is ring rain. Gravity, the invisible hand of the planet, is constantly pulling at the inner edge of the rings. It gently strips away icy particles, charged water molecules, and organic dust, drawing them down along the magnetic field lines into the atmosphere of Saturn. Imagine this process in your mind's eye. It is a slow cosmic drizzle. The rings are gradually dissolving, particle by particle feeding the planet that hosts them. It is a sacrifice. The jewel is giving itself to the wearer. This discovery told us something profound about time. It suggested that the rings are not eternal features that have been there since the birth of the solar system. They are likely young, perhaps only 100 million years old, a mere blink of an eye in the history of the universe. There is a beautiful melancholy in this thought. It means that we, humanity, are incredibly lucky. We arrived at the cosmic party at exactly the right moment to see Saturn's glory. If we had evolved 100 million years earlier, we might have seen a ringless, naked giant. If we had arrived 100 million years later, the rings might have faded into a thin, ghostly haze. We are witnessing a fleeting masterpiece, a temporary bloom of ice in the garden of the night. The final embrace also solved the mystery of the weight. For decades, we did not know exactly how massive the rings were. By flying inside them, Cassini acted like a gravity sensor. It felt the pull of the planet on one side and the pull of the rings on the other. It weighed the rings. It found that they are lighter than we thought, consistent with a younger, fresher origin. And as Cassini fell into the clouds, tasting the chemistry of the upper atmosphere, it sent back a final, complex recipe. It found methane, ammonia, complex organic molecules, the building blocks of chemistry, swirling in the high winds. It told us that Saturn is not just a ball of hydrogen and helium. It is a chemical factory, a mixing bowl of elements that processes the dust of the universe into new forms. This legacy of data is the ghost that remains. The spacecraft is gone, physically merged with the heat and pressure of the deep interior. But the numbers it sent back are still traveling through the minds of scientists, still generating new papers, still answering questions we haven't even learned to ask yet. The mission continues in the archives, a library of light that will never burn down. Now, let your mind drift back to the physical world of Saturn as it is in this very moment. The disturbance of Cassini's entry has long since healed. The clouds have closed over the entry point, smoothing out the ripple. The winds continue to blow at 1,800 kilometers per hour, wrapping the planet in bands of cream and gold. The great white spots will rise and fall again, appearing every 30 years, marking the slow passage of the Saturnian calendar. The moons continue their watch, Titan still drifts in the distance, wrapped in its orange blanket, dreaming of its methane lakes. Enceladus still sprays its icy breath into the void, watering the E-ring with silent generosity. Pan and Daphnis still clear their gaps, the faithful shepherds tending their icy flocks in the darkness. And the rings continue to spin. The spiral waves propagate through the ice, recording the history of the moons in their grooves. The shadows lengthen and shorten as the seasons slowly change. The ice glitters in the weak sunlight, indifferent to our observation, radiant in its solitude. There is a deep comfort in this continuity. The universe does not stop. It does not mourn. It simply is. It exists in a state of majestic, flowing equilibrium. Saturn is a kingdom of fluid time, where rock becomes liquid, where ice becomes rain, where a metal machine becomes a memory. We have completed the grand loop. We have traveled from the launch pad on Earth to the deep, metallic core of a gas giant. We have seen the beauty, the violence, the silence, and the grace of the Ringed Kingdom. The vessel is at rest now. Or maybe you're the kind of person who likes falling asleep to deep thoughts and cosmic mysteries. It has found its home. It is no longer a traveler. It is part of the destination. It is safe in the warm dark of the interior, held forever by the gravity that guided it across the stars. The embrace is final. The embrace is complete. And in the silence that follows, there is only the slow, steady turning of the giant spinning in the velvet night, watching over its realm of ice and gold. We are drifting away now. Slowly, gently, we pull back from the embrace of the giant. The golden clouds of Saturn, which filled our vision only moments ago, begin to recede. They shrink from a vast, overwhelming wall of weather into a sphere, and then into a marble, and finally, they become just another bright, steady point of light in the infinite tapestry of the night. We have traveled far tonight. We have journeyed across billions of kilometers of emptiness. We have spent 20 years wandering through the dark, guided by the silent laws of gravity. We have stood on the frozen shores of Titan, listening to the methane wind. We have flown through the mist of Enceladus, feeling the icy breath of the ocean. We have traced the spiral waves of the rings and felt the hidden pulse of the magnetic heart. But now, the voyage is complete. The exploration is over. It is time to return to the stillness from which we came. Thank you for drifting through the galaxy with me tonight. We have wandered through ancient starlight and unseen forces, feeling the quiet, turning motion of our cosmic home. If these calm, curious explorations help you unwind, I invite you to like or subscribe. It helps other sleepy souls find their way here too. And now, there is nothing left for you to do but rest. The universe will continue its dance without you. You do not need to watch the rings to keep them spinning. You do not need to listen to the winds to keep them blowing. The great machine of the cosmos is self-sustaining, a rhythm that beats whether we are awake or asleep. You can let go of the need to understand, the need to observe, and the need to be present. Let the images we have seen tonight begin to dissolve. Imagine the great hexagon at the North Pole. See its sharp geometric lines softening. The storm is no longer a storm. It is just a gentle swirl of gold, fading into the background of your mind. Let the bright, white ice of Enceladus melt away. The plumes, the geysers, the blue halo of the E-ring Let them all diffuse into a soft, cool mist that evaporates into the dark. Let the intricate, glittering bands of the rings blur. You no longer need to see the millions of particles, the shepherds, or the gaps. They are merging into a single smooth line of silver, a stroke of light painted across the back of your eyelids. It is a line of pure peace, unbroken and still. Your mind has done enough work for today. You have carried the weight of knowledge, but now you can set it down. You can unburden yourself of the facts, the numbers, the names. Let the name Cassini float away like a leaf on a river. Let the words Titan and Saturn become nothing more than soft sounds, gentle vibrations that lull you deeper into relaxation. Feel the gravity of your own world now. Just as Saturn pulls on its rings, the Earth is pulling on you, holding you safely in your bed. It is a heavy, comforting pull. It anchors you. It tells you that you are home. You are not floating in the cold vacuum. You are warm, you are safe, and you are supported. Feel your body becoming heavy. Your legs are heavy, sinking into the mattress. Your arms are heavy, resting by your sides. Your shoulders drop, releasing the tension of the day. The muscles of your face relax, your jaw loosens, and your brow smooths out. There is a deep silence waiting for you. It is the same silence that exists between the stars. It is the silence of the big empty between the rings and the planet. It is a silence that is not empty, but full of peace. It is a velvet darkness that wraps around you, protecting you from the noise and the light. Drift into that darkness. Let yourself float in the void. There is no destination anymore. There is no mission to complete. There is only the slow, rhythmic breathing of your own body, rising and falling like the tides of a quiet sea. You are a traveler who has returned home. You have seen the wonders of the kingdom, and now you have earned your rest. The stars are watching over you. The planets are turning in their slow, silent orbits. The universe is vast and beautiful and timeless, and you are a part of it. Let everything fade. Let the last speck of gold disappear. Let the last shimmer of silver vanish. There is only the dark now, warm, soft, welcoming dark. Close your eyes, rest, and dream of a quiet, radiant sea of stars. Good night.